Imagine a global supply shock that removes 20% of the world's oil from the market. In an instant, the massive fleet of tankers powering the entire global economy comes to a dead stop. On paper, the United States should be immune to this panic. It is the world's leading oil producer, pumping out over 13 million barrels every day. China, by contrast, should be the most vulnerable nation on Earth. It is the world's #1 importer, reliant on foreign sources for 11.5 million barrels a day. Yet, when these shocks happen, the U.S. frequently faces a domestic crisis, while China remains insulated. We cannot measure energy security simply by looking at raw extraction statistics. These top-line numbers hide the physical reality of how energy actually moves through a country. True national resilience is determined by the chemical compatibility of a nation's infrastructure and its structural insulation from global choke points. Most of the new oil from the U.S. shale boom is ultralight, sweet crude. It's thin, low in sulfur, and relatively easy to extract. But the U.S. refinery system wasn't built for this light oil. Decades ago, refiners spent billions on complex cokers, infrastructure specifically engineered to process thick, heavy, sour crude. This diagram shows the mismatch. These advanced refineries cannot run efficiently on domestic shale oil alone. The light crude essentially bypasses the specialized hardware, leaving multi-billion-dollar units sitting idle. To keep these plants running and produce a full slate of gasoline and diesel, U.S. refiners must constantly blend their light domestic oil with heavy foreign grades. This forces a constant trade-off. The U.S. exports millions of barrels of its own premium light crude while remaining dependent on importing 6.3 million barrels of foreign heavy crude every day. This chemical dependency transforms the world's largest oil producer into a fragile system, deeply exposed to any disruption in the global supply chain. To manage these disruptions, the U.S. relies on its Strategic Petroleum Reserve as an emergency backstop. But because refineries are locked into that heavy crude diet, the government has to release specific sour grades from these underground salt caverns to keep the plants operational. When imports are blocked, these sour caverns drain at an unprecedented rate compared to the light reserves, creating a major operational bottleneck in the emergency stockpile. While the government drains its reserves, private refineries follow the highest international profit margins, known as the crack spread. During a crisis, these refineries often reconfigure their plants to maximize the production of aviation jet fuel, which commands a premium price on the global market. Millions of these barrels are exported directly to buyers in Europe, bypassing local markets in the United States. The U.S. model optimizes for global market profit. It generates massive corporate revenue during a shock, but it leaves domestic consumers facing localized shortages and high inflation. China uses a different strategy. Their policy mandates that no single foreign nation can provide more than 20% of their total oil supply. Beijing supports this diversification with a massive physical safety net, a storage cushion estimated at 1.4 billion barrels. This strategic buffer allows the Chinese economy to absorb a maritime blockade without immediate industrial paralysis. Providing this level of insulation requires enormous state-directed investment in idle reserves, a cost that the market-driven U.S. model avoids. China's ultimate goal is to build an energy fortress powered entirely by domestic sources, making it immune to maritime blockades. The challenge is geographic. China generates massive amounts of renewable energy in its western deserts, but the manufacturing centers are thousands of miles away on the coast. To solve this, they built the world's most advanced ultra-high voltage direct current transmission lines. These lines act as electricity pipelines, moving power across the continent directly into dense cities with almost zero energy loss. For heavy industry, they are using a massive build-out of nuclear power and green hydrogen to replace traditional petrochemicals. By electrifying the economy and replacing imported liquids with domestic electrons, China is systematically eroding the maritime leverage that has defined energy geopolitics for decades. Energy independence is a myth if your refineries don't match your domestic supply. True resilience only grows when you move the economy toward domestic grid power. We evaluate geopolitical risk by mapping supply chain insulation against market efficiency. The U.S. strategy focuses on global arbitrage. It is highly profitable, but structural reliance on foreign crude makes it vulnerable. China prioritizes sovereign insulation, sacrificing market efficiency for redundancy, making the economy resilient against supply chain disruptions. To accurately measure geopolitical risk, we must look past the total barrels extracted and analyze the chemistry of the refineries and the independence of the domestic grid.